This episode of Football Tactics was recorded offline rather than streamed. On paper, recording offline was supposed to make it easier for me to do live commentary. Unfortunately, after that other video I did, I messed up my sound settings, resulting in the game audio drowning out my voice. So it seems I really did win the Idiot Games gold medal after all. Game against Gillingham, we're already 1-0 up. Challenger here proving that even if his role in the team has diminished this season, he is still capable of getting that quick kickoff goal if luck permits it. But with his work done for the day, I take the chance to sub on Binns because the future of this team is, with any luck, Jerd and Binns. Mayland is part of that future too, although it has actually been a little bit more difficult than you might think for me to get him on the pitch because with the 5-3-2 formation that I run, there isn't always space in the midfield for a green dot, at least not if I want results. And Bagg, Hutchinson, Draco and Delbridge all bring a certain quality to the midfield that Mayland can't yet. Fellows has been excellent in this game with 2 saves already, though the second save wasn't that hard. Their right midfielder doesn't have a lot of accuracy even with the boost a successful nutmeg brings. We've been on the back foot ever since scoring, but all that matters is what's on the scoreboard, and that still reads 1-0 Nottingham. Getting back to Mayland, he is now on the pitch for the second half, and this is a recurring strategy for me that I like to put my less talented players on the pitch once we have the lead, because it's a lot easier to defend a lead than it is to score a goal. This doesn't apply to the defensive line. I still need my best defenders out there to protect the lead, especially the centre 3. That's why I like to put my weaker defenders out on the wings. Gillingham came into this game as the league leaders, so winning this will be a huge accomplishment for us, assuming there's no nasty surprises at the end here, which there isn't. A crucial 3 points for us, as 10th place Southend United is still a threat. So with no major events to report on in the interim, we come to Bradford City. This back four that Bradford are using is a lot more sturdy than it first looks because the centre back is protecting both holes in the line, the universal defender is there to block wide shots, and if we use the long pass strategy with Hutchinson, the fullbacks ensure that Jerd's cannon shot is still nerfed. And whilst the cannon remains our best chance of scoring in this situation, it still wasn't a particularly good chance. In other news, Bagg is still as useless as ever as he commits a foul, although this formation is quite well equipped to deal with 3 kicks as Bradford is unable to do anything with it. But like I just mentioned, useless Bagg is useless, so Bradford are going to get a chance to attack here after all. Thankfully, Shorthose fails the nutmeg. And that was the last attack of any consequence for the half, so we move on to the second where it's our turn to try and put some pressure on their defense, though with the DF in the way, it's easily cut out. In other news, useless Bagg is useless again, so useless in fact that it gives Bradford a second chance to nutmeg, which they succeed on this time and score. Looks like I'll have to revert to putting my centre-backs on the back row whenever I see nutmeg and just hoping that what happened to us last time I tried that doesn't happen again. With time winding down, I throw caution to the wind in a desperate attempt to get an equaliser, but all it succeeds in doing is allowing them to score a second goal instead. But I had to try it because you don't get competition points for only losing by 1. Jerd has gained another specialisation level, and whilst his skill training is relatively fast already, it's still in our best interest to take at least the -30 training time, as with 2 skills to train, it is going to take a while nonetheless. Our next opponent is Bristol Rovers on what is yet another rainy day. Bagg manages to intercept the kickoff, only to revert back to useless form immediately. Bristol don't score, however, and Popejoy, a bit of a risk taken with this long pass, leads to an attack that works all the way up until Jerd's shot gets turned away for a corner, and subsequently with Draco not on the pitch, I'm unable to put someone on this to give the cross a reasonable chance of being on target. Pete put in a surprise man of the match performance against Gillingham, but has been exposed today, with this being the second time that Sweeting has beaten him. No goal, however, and we go into the second half. I've subbed Draco on so that if we get another corner, which is exactly what we get, he can put in a more accurate cross, or kick it straight over the goal line himself. Confound this British weather! I'm showing this clip to prove that throw-ins are possible even if the player doesn't kick the ball out on purpose. I was going to use this opportunity to nutmeg with Draco, but the player I was going to nutmeg got motivation, and just as a reminder, motivation means that skills are completely ineffective against them. Bristol gets one last big chance shortly thereafter, but Spray has even less accuracy than Sweeter, so he too is thwarted by the DF, and Fellows ends up with a clean sheet to his name without even having to do any work. League table update. We are now 6 points clear of relegation, Southend with 1 win and 2 losses since the episode began. And we have a good chance to pick up more points here against Oldham because we are the stronger team on paper for the first time in a good while. So Oldham have almost no bench depth, and even their starters struggle to compare favourably to ours. But we've beaten enough teams that were supposed to be stronger than us already to know that paper doesn't mean much once the dice rolls begin. And as you can see in the highlights of this first half, we're dominating the possession battle, but each time we fall agonizingly short of being able to put a proper attack together. If we had one more action in each turn, maybe we would have scored, but as it stands, we're going to have to go into half-time 0-0. But eventually a bigger chance presents itself when Bag finally does something useful for once. Ball gets to Draco, who can now dash 3 tiles forward with his nutmeg before chip passing it to Jerd. And the left back in Oldham's formation isn't an actual left back, meaning that this cannon shot is unhindered. Goal, 1-0 up. And with the breakthrough now secured, it seemed like everything was pointing towards another Nottingham home victory. Everything except for the team's complete inability to defend against the cross. Oh, you cheeky tarts! 1-1 the final score, unfortunately. Binns has been teetering on the edge of a level up for a couple of games now, and I finally got him over the hump against Oldham. This is a pretty important skills role coming up, and yes, head play is one of the 3. Yeah, this is a pretty easy decision then, because he'll be able to replace Trivet as our corner scorer and complement Jerd Style, who has Cannon and Rainbow. Pete also became a D in that game, and after returning from a minor injury, rolls slide tackle. I previously established that slide tackle is a skill I like on fullback, so I take it. Though I must point out that any right back experience he gains over the rest of the season will kind of be wasted, since Attil's return will shift Pete over to left back. Peterborough next game. Nothing much to talk about in the first couple of turns here. Blindman comes out to collect the ball, goes all the way back into his own box and holds it. Don't you know we've got a tackling forward on our team? You're really pushing your luck even giving him the chance. Give me the ball. Let me punish you for your transgressions. Get cursed with a 1-0 deficit, Peterborough. But now it's time to review another regrettable action in hindsight, because I moved Challenger into the box to get him away from the motivated player, but the keeper's tackle in this case is a 3 action, which means that when he subsequently misses his lofted pass, the player he was aiming at can still collect the ball and do something with it before the turn is over, and it all leads to a corner kick. Now this is no problem as long as we defend the corner kick properly, which we do, but they just happen to have a slide tackler in the box to bail them out big time. And then Trevitt misses the header despite having head play, allowing a goal to be scored. There's no need to despair over that yet, because we still have 45 minutes, and pay close attention to where Jerd ends up at the end of this tackling sequence, because his positioning will be important later. And by later I mean the very next clip, as we give it to Draco, and he is going to be able to pass it to Jerd after a nutmeg, who is in cannoning position, and we are going to go 2-1 up. Whilst I'm sure most experienced managers would prefer to have long pass, Nutmeg has nonetheless generated several scoring chances for me already, so I'm glad that I gave it a fair chance to impress me. Now all we have to do is prevent Peterborough from scoring again. I even bring Jerd back to defensive midfield after subbing off Bag to help. Thankfully they don't get any more chances to score, as with this final long pass the number of actions left drops down from 6 to 2, allowing Binns to dribble it out. 2 shots, 2 goals. Very efficient scoring from Jerd, but more importantly, guaranteed safety for another season as we are 7 points clear of Southend with 2 to play. This gives me the flexibility to play our backups in the last 2 games, though I don't intend on clearing the bench entirely just yet as the minor placings are still up for grabs. Coincidentally, we're playing Southend United next. And at first everything was going very well, a chance for Hutchinson and Jerd here to connect for the opening goal, but our luck from the previous game doesn't appear to have carried over into this one as I don't even get a corner kick out of it. We do manage to see off a cannon shot from Peterborough themselves, but later on in the game their right mid pulls a challenger and scores a goal out of nothing. There's no point in me going into much detail over a game that doesn't mean anything long term, so I'll just report that after a slide tackle, the evil Delbridge also got in amongst the scorers. So we went 2-0 down in this game, and we deserved to lose, honestly, even if the goals we did concede were a bit unlucky. Popejoy becomes the next veteran to receive the fan favourite trait. Also, Fellows has finished learning level 1 of playing out, so maybe he'll be able to save a header every now and then. The upper placings are now out of reach, but we can still leapfrog Wimbledon for 8th if we win, with the potential to go as high as 7th, so I'm going to give this a red hot go. Funny thing happened in the first half though. Aggressive tackle leads to an injury. That's not the funny thing. The funny thing is that I forgot to put a substitute on, so I'm inadvertently playing with 10 men. Although I do manage to fix that problem pretty quickly before it does any serious damage, and it does mean we are 11 on 10 going into the second half because their striker got sent off as a result. And we are soon to be blessed with another advantage, Challenger. That's only his 4th goal of the season, believe it or not. Trivet has 5, Jerd has 8, which is a pretty big turnaround for him considering a couple of seasons ago he couldn't score no matter what we did. Wimbledon didn't let us keep our lead without a fierce battle though. Drew a corner kick, we managed to see this one off, but they got another one a little later on. Our players, or at least some of them, have decent control now, so we can from time to time win fights in the box, and Fellows was able to claim this ball. This was actually the last big chance Wimbledon had, and we were able to see out the clock and win this game 1-0. Before his injury, Chalk reached specialisation level 2, and I've decided to go universal defender with him because I think him and his skill reaction is better suited to the centre 3, and we're going to need to replace some or all of our centre 3 sooner rather than later. The result we needed was a Peterborough loss, but that didn't happen, so we finished 8th rather than 7th. Gillingham bounced back from their loss against us to reclaim the top position in the league. Pretty good going for them considering that they were in the amateur league at the start of this game. Moving on to the other leagues. Very tightly contested top 4 in the amateur league with Oxford United ultimately winning. Very unlucky from Walsall, they missed out on promotion on goals scored. Interesting piece of trivia, Scrimgour led the amateur league in saves, though he still didn't come close to the 3.4 saves per game that Big managed in our league. It was very touch and go for the second league title, but Cardiff City ultimately edges out Norwich. Bolton Wanderers bounced back despite only scoring 7 points in the First League last season. The parity issues between First League and Premier League still aren't sorted, the 3 relegated teams dominating this division with Southampton ultimately winning the title. Another closely contested Premier League this season. It ultimately became the Battle of Manchester, which the Red Devils won by a point. Aston Villa, another disastrous campaign for them, although they at least scored more than 3 bloomin' points. On to the Cups then. Sheffield United wins the Prestige Cup after a defensive struggle with Norwich, whilst Burnley, who have been punching above their weight all series, win their first piece of silverware by drubbing West Ham. And finally, the European trophies. Ajax beat some Romanian team I've never even heard of to win the EFA Cup, and despite Paris Saint-Germain's early exit, the European Cup remains on French soil as Lyon end up beating Dortmund in that final.